Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. Got a lot of exciting things to talk about, I believe. We've got some Nikon news. Yes, we've got some Sigma news of new lenses. We've got some Blackmist filters to discuss, and I'll demonstrate those. And so for various other tips and tricks and new releases, well, sit back and let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is actually these Blackmist filters from K&F. Now, what am I referring to? Well, if I just get you the box out, I'll show you the box. This is the box here. I just put it up to my face so you can see it. And it's simply a range of Blackmist filters to give a nice specialised effect in videography and photography. Now, I'll use them predominantly for video work, and the reason I'm using them is it gives a cinematic effect, if you like. So the idea of a Blackmist filter, and here's just one of them here. This is the 1/4 version of strength. These Blackmist filters are pretty cool because what they can do is they give a beautiful bloom and halo of the light. So you'll notice that I've got a few lights behind me. They're sitting around my shoulders and the back of my head, and where my hands will be positioned from time to time. And that's actually important because what that does is the backlighting, with the blocking of the backlighting, creates that halo effect or exemplifies it. And so therefore you'll be able to see the results much better. So I'll start off with various filter strengths. I'll start off with a 1/8, and then I'll go on to a 1/4, and then I'll have 1/8, a 1/4, and another 1/8 on, and that'll be equivalent to a half in strength, and that'll show you all the different strengths of the blooming and the softening of the light and the general filtration it gives. So the idea of these is not so much as like a filter, like an ND filter or polarizer. It's more for that effect of the lighting behind you. And also what it does, it gives a beautifying effect because it gives sort of like a softening, if you want. And so that way, if you're taking photos or videoing women and who's obviously self-conscious about how they look, it gives a reduction in wrinkles, spots and blemishes on the face. And of course it does the same with men as well. So it can make them look prettier. Now, I'm 61 years old this year. I don't expect it to make me look very pretty. I think those days are well behind me, but it'll be interesting. You'll be able to see the texture on my face and skin and that on my hands and so on as well. And it'll give you an overall idea of what they do and what they're all about. So I'll put the lights on very soon when I start doing the demonstration. I didn't want to blind you with them right now. They become quite distracting when they're on. And I'll have them on only when I'm demonstrating the Blackmist filters. As soon as I'm finished with that part of the segment, then I'll turn them off. There is also a demonstration without me in the scene where I'll actually be filming a soft toy, an elephant, and what I'll be doing is having lights behind that. And that gives me an opportunity to be behind the camera changing the filters and giving you a little talk along as I'm going. So that'll be the part B, if you like, of this part A segment of the Blackmist filters from K&F. Now, firstly, why have I chosen K&F filters? Really, it's just because of the great value they are. There's Tiffin brands and various other brands that make these filters. A lot of the time they're at least twice as expensive and you're getting pretty much the same result. I think certain brands like Tiffin are a little bit more extreme in their filtration. So their quarters look like halves, or their eighths look like almost a quarter. They're sort of a bit deeper into the effect. I actually don't want that. I'd like a softer effect and be able to work my way up, layering them on. So that's what I'll be doing with you. So let me get started. I'll turn these lights on. And we'll talk camera gear a little later. We'll just talk about these filters and you'll be able to see the different effects. So just give me a chance to turn the lights on and then talk you through the first filters. So stage one is actually just turning the lights on. You can see now I'm backlit more than I am forward lit, I think probably. But I can still see focus is gained on my eye from the monitor that I'm looking at to check visuals. So that's working fine. Now we have this backlighting. I have also some side lighting here with these lamps, these Chinese, Japanese lanterns. And of course we have some little string of bead lights there. They're actually paper cranes that illuminate. So that's sort of novel. But all these different lights in the background will amplify the effect. Now right now we have no filter on. So this is what the backlighting looks like with no filter. I'm using the ZFC camera. 35mm f1.8 lens at 1.8. It's the Viltrox lens. And what I'll be doing is, because it's APS-C, and I have most of these filters are full frame, and they're 82mm as well, I will be using an adapter. So the adapter ring is this one here. I bought this simple little filtration adapter ring. It goes from 55 in the center to 82 outside. So when I'm not needing a lot of filtration, I'll simply have this little 55mm Blackmist filter, 1/8 on my APS-C camera. And this is for the full frame lens, but it's still an APS-C camera. This 55mm, and that's what most of those primes that I have are, 55mm. So I can use that as a starting point. When I want to increase and double up, I can use this adapter ring, and I simply put them together, and they just simply screw in. So if I just screw them in now, very simply, there we go. Right, now we've got the adapter. So now you can see that I have the, see the little flying saucer, doesn't it there? But what we have now is the filter, 1/8 filter, and it's a 55mm, and then we have the 82mm adapter, so that when I start putting my 82mm filters on, you can see that they'll fit over quite nicely, and it's quick and easy to change them around. So it gives me options to use different primes and different strengths of filtration without having to buy 100 filters and all these different adapters. I can just have the one adapter, so that's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on this 1/8 filter now, and that's our starting point. So in 5 seconds, you'll see it with the 1/8 filter on. So here we are, guys. We've got the 1/8 filter on right now. That's the 55mm with the adapter plate over. There's nothing on that adapter plate just yet, so it's just the 1/8 grade. So just explaining the Blackmist system with you, it'll start off, the weakest filtration that they use for this Blackmist is 1/8. Then the next stage up is a quarter, so they're going in fractions, and then from a quarter it goes to half and then a full. Now, obviously, anything around a half or more is very severe, so I don't really highly recommend that. That would be a special effects situation where you really wanted to create like a fog look into the camera. I'm not after that, I'm just after highlighting the backlighting. So we'll have a look at that as we go. But right now we've just transferred from no filter to 1/8. And you'll see a slight softening in the lights, a little bit of a glow around them. And as I sort of protrude into them, it should provide a slight halo. So every time I'm covering these lights, it should generate a slight halo effect around the object in front of the lights. So see if you can pick that up as we go. So next one I'm going to put on now is I'm going to add 1/8 again, which is just one of these 82mm 1/8 K&F filters. And I'll put that on so we end up with the equivalently of about a quarter in filtration. So let me just go do that now for you. So here we are. We've now got the two 1/8 filters on, the 55mm and the 82mm filter. So two 1/8s is a quarter, and that's the strength we're looking at now. I don't know if you can pick up any sort of the halo effect or the softening of the backlighting, but it should be some more glowing rather than harsh as a backlight. It should soften them down and bloom out the light as like a halo effect around. Now I'm putting my hands up in front of them because that's usually where you notice it and you see more of that effect when you've got an object in front. Hence it's right behind me, the lighting right now. So I don't know if you can notice it when I do the same with these little Chinese lanterns as well. You may see that sort of similar effect. So this now we're looking at is equivalent of 1/4. Now I will say also that because I'm using a 55mm diameter prime lens, and then I'm putting these larger diameter filters over the top, there may be a situation where we're only getting a center portion of the filtration effect available, because I doubt the lens goes straight out wide like that, encompasses all that area, but it probably gets at least maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of that surface area is of value in the filtration. That may soften the effect a little bit, I'm not sure, but that's why I also did the full frame test with the elephant that you'll see a little later on. So that was completely 82mm, and only 82mm filters were used on a full frame camera. So we'll be able to compare the two, APS-C versus full frame, see if there's a significant difference or not. Now with the full frame version, you'll see later, that was done at 2.2 aperture. And this is done at 1.8 aperture being APS-C. So the look should be extremely similar. So aperture doesn't change whether it's APS-C or full frame. A 1.4 lens or a 1.8 lens or a 2.8 lens is still 2.8, whether it's APS-C or full frame. But the depth of field will change because of the sensor size. And that's why people get often confused and thinking, oh, that lens looks like it's a different aperture. It's not the aperture that's different, it's the focal length is different, if you like. So that's why you don't get as much a shallow depth of field. But that's just a little side point. So at the moment, as I say, we're looking at the equivalent of around a quarter filtration. Now what I'm going to do is take off that big 1/8, and then I'll put on the quarter, which is here, that's the quarter strength one, and the quarter and the original 1/8 will end up with almost a half. So let's have a look and see how that looks. So there we go, guys, I'm back again, and as you can see here, I have the 1/8 filter with me here that I've just removed, but I did add on instead a full 1/4. So we've got now the original 1/8, and now we've got a 1/4 added on, so that's what that looks like there. So just sort of give you an idea, we're starting to get into the heavier aspects of filtration now. It's 1/4 plus 1/8 filter. So that should be getting quite strong in its effect. The light should be getting quite soft, should be quite a glow. When I'm covering them or putting my hands anywhere near where the lights are, it should provide a nice haloing effect and a glow. You'll notice the same over here when I'm doing it with the lanterns. So I hope the effect is noticeable and interesting for you, but it does illustrate exactly what a black mist is all about and what it achieves. So the next stage to do is to put this one on as well, and we're ending up well over a 1/4, almost a half in filtration, if not completely 1/2. So that should be quite severe. So let's have a look and see what I would consider the extreme that was appropriate to use actually looks like. So here we are with all my filters on. So we've got 2 1/8s and a full 1/4 filter on, and we should be getting quite a soft detail in those lights. In fact, when I'm looking at the monitor right now, I can see that the lights are actually quite softer. They're really haloing out and blooming and becoming very soft. Now, if I put my hands in front, we should get a nice glow effect around wherever I'm using to block those lights. It should really amplify the light effect. If I do the same with these lights here, I'm hoping you sort of notice something. They're a little bit quite soft in comparison to the ones behind me, so the effect might not be quite as strong. But I'm sure you can see here that we are getting quite an effect, and it should be looking pretty amazing. So I'm sort of loving the look of it. I think it gives a lot of character to the video. I think you just got to be really careful not to overdo it. It's like anything, any sort of filtration or any kit you use, even editing in general. You know, too much is you've gone over the top and it gets look crazy then, starts to make a mockery of the video. So having, I think, up to 1/4 in filtration equivalently, I think that's more than enough. This at now 1/2 I think is probably a little much, but it does emphasize the results that you're getting and what actually is achieving. So I'm hoping you're enjoying the way this is looking and it's all working out well for you, I trust. What I'm just going to do is take all those filters off again, turn the lights off behind me, and so we can talk. So hello guys and girls, here we are with a little test sample for us where a friendly little elephant is helping out as a test subject in focus. You can see the little KF filter box in his lap, and behind him of course we have those coloured lights. So as you can see, there's all multicolours. There's red, blue, green, yellow, white. Some of them you can see, some you can't, because the reason is it's the effect that we want to achieve with these Blackmist filters is often best done by backlighting that's actually blocked by the subject. So when you stand in front of a backlight, what that does is it creates more of a bloom and a halo effect around you. And that's exactly what we're trying to emphasize. So right now, the little elephant subject has backlighting, but it's not really blooming and not as soft and out of focus as we'd like. So what we can do to help that along is put some Blackmist filters on. And that's what we're going to sample today. We're focusing on the elephant's face in order to create a shallower depth of field. So you notice that the little fairy lights at the back, golden ones up the wall, they're quite blurred out, and even the little Chinese lanterns there, they're obviously a little bit out of focus and blurred out too. So you have various stages because some are closer, some are further away. But right now we have the situation where there is no filter. This is just the lens. I'm using the Nikon Z9 with the Tamron 35 to 150 f2 to f2.8. It's on 50mm, so it's set at f2.2, and that gives a nice shallow depth of field and brightness. And what we're going to do is just sample the difference between no filter, which we're experiencing right now. Then I'm going to put on a 1/8 filter, which is the slightest effect. And then we're going to put a 1/4 on, and then we're going to double up with the 1/8 and 1/4, and we get an idea of the graduality of it. So this is a full frame look. It's a full frame lens. We've got a full frame camera. When I do the actual video of myself, what I'll do is I'll have that with a crop sensor camera, and we'll try the same sort of scenario, except I'll be the subject rather than the elephant. And so that way, of course, you know, you'll see it both how it looks on a crop sensor camera and then how it looks on a full frame camera. So let's go with our first filter. That's the K&F Concept Blackmist 1.8 filter. So here we are, that's the effect we get with the 1/8 filtration of black mist. It's a K&F filter, as I say. I purchased these because they're quite good value for money. They're quite inexpensive and you still get a great result with them. So I've not noticed any degradation in image quality. You lose a little bit of contrast, but that's to be expected with the black mist. That's sort of the idea, isn't it? Give an old cinematic film look. So right now we have the 1/8 filtration on, and you'll see that there is a little bit more bloomed, a little bit more blurriness to the lights. And what we'll do is we'll now put on the 1/4 and we'll compare. So keep looking at all the different lights in the background and the halo effect of the lights as we put on now the 1/4 to increase that effect. So here we are now with the 1/4 grade KF Concept Blackmist filter. So we've gone from 1/8 to now 1/4. We've doubled the effect. So immediately I can see through the back of the camera that there is definitely a greater bloom, a greater softness to the lights. And I think that's a great effect. It gives a very, as I said, a cinematic, but also a nice dreamy sort of effect to the lighting. As I said, you have to have a subject in front of the lights to get the best benefit from the blooming and the halo effect. And so that's why the elephant is there and we're focusing on him. So right now, I think that 1/4 effect is actually my favorite. I think that's actually a pretty great look, but the 1/8 is handy when you just want to leave it on all the time and you want that consistent sort of look, but you don't want to sort of degrade the film quality too much. So for the effect look, I prefer the 1/4, which is on now, but for general convenience, the 1/8 is great. So let's go one more step further, and what we'll do is we'll put on the 1/8 filter on top of the 1/4. Now these are both 82mm filter threads, which suits this lens perfectly, and so therefore I'm not having to worry about adapters at this particular situation. So I'm just stacking 82mm filters. So let me do that. So here what we have now is an effect of the 1/4 and the 1/8 combined. And so this is getting quite strong as an effect. So it's probably as strong as you'd ever want to go, because if it went any stronger, you sort of lose too much resolution or clarity of the image, I should say, and the blooming effect sort of almost like taking over the video rather than being a complement. But it's interesting to see the effect, isn't it? If you get to see the differences, then you know what's going on. So as I say, this is the 1/4 plus the 1/8 filter on my Nikon full frame camera with the Tamron 35 to 150. As I say, the settings were F2.2 and the ISO is at 100. Those lights in the background, the coloured lights you're looking at now, are all on their softest settings. So most of them are only on about 10 to 15% of strength. If I put them any stronger, it just dominates the image too much. So what I've done is I've set them at very low settings just to give a soft taste to this effect. So what I'll do is I'll just go backwards again and I'll put the 1/8 off, so we're left with only the 1/4, and then I'll revert back to the 1/8 and you'll see a gradual decrease of filter effects now. So here we are back at the 1/4 on its own. So that softness effect is just reduced a little bit. That's 1/4 grade of Blackmist filter. I'm just going to remove that 1/4 and now put only on the 1/8 and you can compare the difference. Right you are. So here we are back at 1/8 only Blackmist filter, KF Concept. And I think that's a pretty soft and nice look to the image. So if you're doing videoing all day, 1/8 is probably great. Gives a little bit of softness and bloom with the lighting, but without taking over the image. So I just wanted to compare that for you by going forward and then going back in the filtration. It saves you having to go back and forth in the video because you've seen it as one continual shoot. So thank you for your patience with that. I hope that was handy and useful. I think Blackmists are great. I think all filtration is great. I have a heap of ND filters, polarizing filters and the likes. I think filters, particularly for video, are quite amazing and very handy. So we're back now, no filtration, no backlighting, just normal framing as we do. And what I wanted to do is talk about these filters with you in a physical sense a little bit more. So I'm showing you here an 82 version, and what I find very interesting about them is that they have this nice nailing on them, so you can get a good grip on them when you're trying to take the filters. And I have my full frame camera here. When you're trying to put them on and off, it's awesome to have that little grip that they provide, and I'll show you close-up images of it, what they look like, but that little grip, and it makes it so much easier to get them on and off because you can get a good hard grip on them. Sometimes people make the mistake of putting filters on too tight, and when you crank them on tight, that's fantastic, then you can't get the dang things off. You're trying to force them off or use multi-grip pliers, and very good chance of damaging them. So the trick is, and I will say this for everyone because this is important to know, when you're putting any sort of filter on, I don't care if it's a polarizer filter, an ND filter, you're using one of these Blackmist filters, when you put them on firm and then just maybe back it up just a quarter of a turn, just so it's on firm enough to stay there, because after all, you've had about 4 or 5 rotations. It's not going anywhere, it's not going to drop off, it is screwed on, but it doesn't need to be cranked tight. There's no advantage to that. It doesn't provide any function. Just have them tight enough that you feel that it's at its end of its thread, but don't crank it hard. Just leave it on and keep it nice and soft, and you'll always be happy to be able to get them on and off as you want. double them up, take them, swap them, change them at will, and you won't have any trouble with them getting stuck. So I think that is very important. But I did want to emphasize the fact that this lovely, lovely knurling effect that they have on them really makes that easy to work with. And that's one of the reasons I also chose those filters, because that's such a great little idea. Now, another thing I wanted to show you was just the packaging they came in, because I think that's quite relevant. Now, I bought a series of these. I bought 3, but right now I'm just going to open one up and show you the actual packaging. Here we are. So the packaging, if you can see it here, is quite simple, but there's a foam insert, and you notice it has little finger grip cavities, so that when you put the filter inside, it sits in there quite safe and sturdy. You can press it into that foam, but when you want to get it out, it has that little grip for your fingers. If you can see it, little concave at the top and bottom. Very easy to put in and out. That's fantastic. Molded for the hand there, which is great. You close them, they're clean, they're dry. They come in a little case that identifies exactly what they are with the specification of what model it was, whether it's a 1/8, a 1/4 or half or whatever. And so you can keep them all together and you can't confuse them. And I think it's just great that they keep them safe and more padded like that. So that's a great little kit that they give you when you buy each filter. Another thing they've provided with this particular model is these lovely, lovely microfiber cleaning cloths. Now, I've got, what, 6 of these now, because I bought 3 different filters, and each one comes with a minimum of 2 of these cleaning cloths. So the fact that they give you nice microfiber cleaning cloths, I've left them sealed up to keep them clean and safe, so I haven't had to undo them. But if you see this orange packaging, when you're buying the units, you know you're getting these cleaning cloths with it. And look, it's something for nothing. It doesn't hurt to have a cleaning cloth with you, because you can get your sticky fingers all over the filters, and they're not as nice and effective, are they? So that's just another free gift you get, a cleaning cloth or 2, and I think that's marvellous. Good on them for providing all the necessities to make everything a joy to use. So that's the end of the filtration talk for now. What we're going to do is move on now to the latest camera news, and we've got quite a lot of camera news. It's very exciting. So let's start off with the head of the game, and that is the latest Nikon lens. So Nikon have come out now with a new version of the 24-70 2.8S lens. Now, I previously owned this lens. I can show you an image or 2 of it. I've owned the 24-70 2.8S lens. I've owned the 70-200 S lens as well. Beautiful pro level lenses, but unfortunately also quite expensive. This new one is no exception. Yes, it's been modified, it's been structurally changed significantly to be more up to date and current, which is fantastic, but also the price has gone up proportionally another 10% or more. So of course, it's getting quite pricey now, over $4,000 Australian money anyway to purchase one of those. Now, it's a great unit. Obviously 24-70 is a very versatile range. F2.8 is a great aperture, and of course the construction of these lenses is second to none. I do believe it's made in Japan and of very high quality. So these S-line lenses, particularly the Holy Trinity of lenses, are extremely brilliantly made. So quality-wise, you're not going to do any better than them. They are great. So what are some of the interesting optical features that we have? Well, with this new features is internal zoom. So I'll use an illustration here of a lenses right in front of me. This is my Tamron 35-150 zoom. So we're talking about a zoom on a Nikon camera. And so this one here, you notice how it has a barrel that comes out? See the barrel extending? There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of lenses do it, but unfortunately it can suck in dust and moisture if you're out in the worst weather environments. So do you really want that to happen? Well, you'd really avoid it if you could. Now, the 70-200 has internal zooming, as does the 180-600 lens they have. And if you think back to the 14-24, if you're looking at an ultra wide, that also is internally zooming. There's no barrel creeping in and out. So what they've done with this new 24-70 Pro lens is they've made it internal zooming, and that is magnificent. What a great feature that they've put into that. So now it doesn't matter, you buy any one of those 3 Holy Trinity lenses, the 14-24, 24-70 now, or the 70-200, they all have internal zooming inside the barrel. So that's magnificent. It does make the thing overall a tiny bit longer when it's in your camera bag, because it's not contracting up anymore. But however, it's the average length now. So instead of it, when you extend it going longer, now it's slightly shorter in its extended form, but slightly longer in its contracted form. It ends up about the same, really, isn't it? But a big advantage that they've done, and this is another step that I think is really impressive, so another feature they've done that's really fantastic is they've made it actually lighter, which is great. So instead of the 805 grams that it used to be, the original model, it's now 675. And look, that's a significant difference, about 130 grams. It might not sound huge overall, but anything that's lighter is better, isn't it? I mean, it's less weight in your hand carrying it around. And that was a bit of a gripe I had with the other lens, that it was quite heavy for its limited focal range. So this lens here I have here, this is a pretty heavy lens too. It weighs about 1,000 grams, thereabouts. But the thing is, it's a huge range. 35 to 150 is massive range, and it is an F2 to 2.8. So of course, with that considered, you understand it's going to be a bulkier and heavier lens. However, this 24 to 70 from Nikon, at that range now, at 675 grams, is very reasonable now. That's actually what I think it always should have been, and is a very appropriate weight. So it's a lot more comfortable to carry. Carry in your bag, carry around in your hand. So that's two things they've got going for them now, haven't they? They've got it lighter, and they've got the internal zooming, so no moisture creeping in. That's actually an interesting point, because when I owned my 24 to 70 2.8S lens, that original model, I did have a speck of dust. So if we were looking at, say, for example, looking through the image of the lens, I'm going to use this 82mm filter as an illustration. It's an 82mm filter thread on the original one. I had a speck of dust internally that was about the 4 o'clock position, and was about a third of the way into the lens. Now, I was very fortunate that it didn't affect any of the actual quality of the imagery. It was sort of out to the side a bit and got it blurred out because it was in middle of this center of the lens. Didn't seem to affect image quality at all. But what it showed me is this barrel creeping in and out can attract moisture and dust, and that's obviously what had happened. It sucks some matter in there, and there's no way of getting it out once it's in. So that was disappointing that it had that, but of course it didn't affect the quality, so I didn't mind so much. But what it illustrates is having internal zoom is a real bonus, particularly if you're out in the elements a lot. The other feature that they've done now that's very exciting too is they've made the actual external filter size of the barrel of the lens down to 77 mils. So previously it was 82, as this one is. Now it's 77, just like the 70 to 200. So that matches. So you're only buying one set of filters now. So if you have the 24 to 70 and the 70 to 200, they're both 77 mil now. That's, of course, reduced the volume of the barrel down. It's a bit smaller. And again, it makes it lighter, easier to pack, and tidier. So more comfortable in the hands too, because 82 does seem to be a bit girthy in the hand. Feels voluminous. 77 is just that little bit more comfortable when you're holding the lens, especially for the ladies, I imagine, with smaller hands. So overall, these three improvements, and we'll just go over them again. It's the internal zooming. It's the fact that the unit is lighter, which is very nice, and lighter in weight. And the fact that the filter thread is a bit smaller are all great features. Now, there's still more features than that. For example, it has now 11 aperture blades, where previously it had 9. Now, that's not really a big deal, I'll be honest with you, because 7 used to be the standard and 9 was the professional. 11 is the exception. You get that in some lenses, but certainly anything between 9 and 11 is fantastic. So the fact that they've even got more means just the bokeh is going to be that little bit smoother, rounder, and softer. So that's not a negative. That's certainly a positive, and we're going to tick it as a positive for sure. So 11 aperture blades, that's a real bonus. I like the sound of that. And I think the final feature is it's a more internally simple lens. So they've gone down from 17 elements down to 15 elements. So it's less elements. That's less mess inside the lens, which means it's going to be faster in focusing. And of course, they do have the silky smooth motor in it now, which is their latest form of zooming motor and focusing motor system. And that means it's going to be quiet, it's going to be super fast and super accurate in focusing, which is fantastic for videographers. You know, with photography, it's not really that big a deal whether it's super fast or not, unless you're taking wildlife or sports action. But in general, portrait photography, for example, or sceneries and so on, travel, holiday, snappy focus isn't that big a deal, but it's a big deal when it comes to video. So if you've got something that'll track really fast and stick to an object and acquire focus quickly for video, that's magnificent. And this would be a great video lens for all those reasons that I've mentioned. So I think it's a terrific package. That's 90% of all the new features it has. Of course, it is going to be a little bit more expensive, and at about $4,500 or something Australian, I think that's pretty expensive. Now, it's of standard expense with Nikon lenses at the moment. They're better lenses, they're high-quality pro lenses, are around that price point. I'm just going to suggest that maybe there are better value options out there. I think the Tamron, for example, 28 to 75, which is in that ballpark sort of figure at 2.8, I think that's about $1,800 Australian. So it's less than half price, and it's about 90% as good. And then you've got a Sigma equivalent. They've got a 24-70 out just recently. That's a Generation 2 or Pro level lens, and that one's about $1,500 cheaper than the Nikon equivalent. So I'm not saying that these lenses are better or even as good, but they're certainly 90% of the way there and probably an average of half the cost. So that's something you've really got to consider, I'm sorry. I know I bring this up in every discussion we have, but I've got to be realistic with you. You know, I can't recommend something just off the top, say, no, look, Nikon's released it, therefore you have to get it. I'm not a shrill for Nikon, but I appreciate the good quality products they're producing. And that is a magnificent product. This 24-70 is revolutionary. They've really changed their whole formula in this lens, and I give them 2 thumbs up for doing that. They've made a magnificent product. For me personally, I've owned the 24-70, as I say, and I found that I just wasn't pulling it out of the bag as much as I was my primes. So, you know, if I want to use that sort of zone, very often I'm using either a 24, 35, 50 or 85 prime to get the best results possible and the brighter aperture. So because I'm using a lot of primes and I own them, I just found that a zoom in that range wasn't for me. But that doesn't mean it's not for you. It might be the exact perfect arrangement you need for your purpose, and you only want one lens and that'll do everything for you. For me, in my situation, with this one here, this Tamron lens, the 35-150, I find this is the equivalent of a 24-70 and a 70-200 all in one. So for me, this is like having 2 lenses, and for $2,200 Australian, it was a real bargain, especially with its bright aperture of f2 when it's in its wider focal ranges. And I find all I need to do then is grab a little prime I have, say a little 24 1.8 prime, take it with me, and then I've got a great range of focal lengths to use, and the expense of all that is about $2,500 to $3,000, and I have everything included. It's almost like having the holy trinity of lenses for $2,500. So for me, value for money and my application of use, I've got other lenses that I use that I find most suitable. But I don't want to detract from Nikon and the great product that they've produced. Now, I mentioned some other brand lenses, and other brand lenses have brought out some exciting stuff too. So what is that? Well, for example, Sigma have recently released what Nikon have had for a very long time, and this is exciting. This is a 200mm f2.0. So not a 2.8, but a 2.0. So it's a big prime lens, a big girthy, chunky prime lens, but 200mm at f2, fabulous, dreamy portrait lens, or very good for tight-in sports action. So if you're in a situation where you need low light performance, but you need a longer focal length, a 70-200 may not just quite do it for you, because even though you've got the focal length, the aperture's not as bright as you would like, this f2 might hit the mark for you. Now, it's not going to be cheap, but it will be half the price of the Nikon equivalent. So Nikon have had a 200mm f2 for a very long time, I think about 8 years. They're up to now the Series 2 of that lens, Mark II version, and it's a brilliant lens. I know Matt Granger owns it, and he loves these lenses. He says they're fantastic, he's never going to get rid of them. But that's the focal length and the aperture he's talking about. Now, Sigma released one at half the cost. He might be interested in those, I can't say. But what I do know is that if I was going to buy one, I'm sorry, Nikon, I would be buying the Sigma one because it's half the cost for pretty much the same package, and it is a little bit lighter as well than the Nikon version. So whether Nikon come out with a Series 3 to compete, and it is lighter and so on, I can't say. They may do that. But at the moment, Sigma released one, and that's their latest puppy, and I think it's a very exciting option. So another lens they're in the process of releasing, and it's not actually on the market at the moment, we're talking rumours, speculations and pre-release conversation, is almost like a Plena, to use a Nikon equivalent. So this is a 135mm f1.4. So 1.4 at 135mm, mind blown, wow, just how shallow a depth of field is that going to have? Look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think you would be able to tell much difference really between a 135mm 1.4 and a 200mm f2. I think focal length via aperture, it's going to be very, very similar. It's going to be a tight race. There'd be actually any image difference for us. Obviously the brightness is going to be a bit better with 1.4, but then, your compression and so on is better with the 200mm. But I think comparatively, you got them side by side, you'd be struggling to know which one to get, because I think they're both very exciting options. And, a 1.4 135, well, that unfortunately beats both Viltrox, it beats Nikon, it beats any other manufacturer at the moment. That is a spectacularly bright lens with an incredible shallow depth of field. So you're wanting a bokeh master. Sigma have just released a new bokeh master, and unfortunately they've basically pooped over Nikon and Viltrox and various others. So that doesn't mean necessarily the others are useless or you've wasted your money or they're no good. No, I'm not trying to down any other lens. All I'm saying is, these guys, they just keep reinventing and just keep re-releasing new and new exciting stuff. So there's never a hurry to go buy the latest thing, because in 6 months' time, goodness knows what the other manufacturers are going to release. And especially these aftermarket companies like your Viltrox, your Sigma, your Tamron, they're competing hard against the A manufacturers, aren't they? The Canon, the Sonys, the Nikons, and etc. So they're competing hard. They've got to release something special and unique to be, applicable and current and relevant. So I'm glad that they are. I'm glad that they're giving us these various options. I'm sort of disappointed. When I say disappointed, when you think about the 24-70 again, we're talking about that Nikon lens, the Series 2 lens. I think if only they could have made something a little bit unique in the formula of the lens. That is what I'm saying, is the whole 24-70 2.8 thing. If only that could have been a bit brighter on aperture, maybe F2 or F2.4 or something like that, just to make it unique, or made it a bit longer in focal length. So instead of a 24-70, it was a 20-70, or vice versa, a 24-85, or something like that, just to make it different again, because there's so many 24-70s on the market. So what, sort of thing, like it's just another one of many. So they didn't choose to do that, but what I will give them thumbs up for is they were innovative in the construction of the lens and they made it interesting. So good on them for that. So other than that, there is one other minor Sigma lens that's come out. And when I say minor, I'm not being rude, but it's just an APS-C lens. I tend to not buy APS-C lenses. I just buy full frame lenses and work with that. Usually I find them more versatile, especially when I have a full frame camera. It's nice to be able to use one lens for either camera. Doesn't matter. I'm not saying, that's an APS-C lens, I can't use it practically on this camera, vice versa. No, I just buy all full frame and I just do the math to work out the difference. But this new one is a 12mm f1.4. So 12 is extremely wide for APS-C. It's equivalent of around an 18mm on a full frame. So it says 12mm, but it's not 12mm on a full frame. It's 12mm on an APS-C, like I'm shooting now with the ZFC, crop sensor camera. So on a crop sensor camera, 12mm is equivalent to 18 on full frame, but the 1.4 is still relevant. So it's still a bright aperture. So where is this thing useful? Excellent if you're doing landscape photography with a small light camera. So you're traveling around, you don't want a heavy big full frame camera, you want something compact and small. This is a compact and smaller lens too, so it's lightweight and compact, it's bright. You've got plenty of choices with that. 18mm is perfect for things like vlogging. It's perfect for things like videography in general if you're using like a gimbal, nice and wide and bright. And it's also excellent for doing any landscape photography where you want a wide field of view. So do I think that it's a useful lens? Yes, it is a very good structure. Now I can speak from experience because I own the Viltrox 13mm 1.4 lens, which is almost identical. The difference between 13 and 12 is the difference between 18mm and 19.5 on a full frame camera. It's very, very little difference, but there is a difference. So if ultimate wideness is the thing, you'd go with this Sigma lens because it's a millimetre wider. But for my point of view, value for money wise, the Viltrox lens at 13mm 1.4 APS-C lens was about $550. I reckon that was excellent value for money. It worked well and I owned it for about 6 to 12 months before I sold that and moved on. Only moved on because the lens was great, but I just didn't want to buy any APS-C lenses. I preferred to have that versatility of full frame on either one and just doing that mathematical equation difference. So that's the news at the moment that I wanted to talk about. I suppose there's a gossip news we can talk about very briefly, so I'm not wasting your time just talking nonsense. But the gossip news is there's a lot of rumours about a Nikon Z9, and I'm having the Z9 here, so I just show you, yes, Z9, I actually own one. The Z9 Mark II. Now they're going to release one of those. There's a lot of Mark II versions of cameras out now, even a Mark III with the Z6. Are they going to release a Mark II version Z9 or a Z8? Well, I believe they will in time, but I think it'll be at least 12 months away. You might get an announcement, a starting to manufacture announcement, a preemptive announcement in maybe 6 months or a year, but it'll be at least 12 months before one comes out. And the reason I say this is because the Z9, Z8 is so relevant still. 8K video, what are they going to do? Have 16K video? Who cares? Like, no one's ever going to use that. It's ridiculous. So it's 8K, that's good enough, and it does 60 frames a second if you need it. So there's only a few things I can actually think that would justify a quick release of a Z9 Mark II or a Z8 Mark II, and that would be things like the 4K video going from, say, 120 frames per second to 240, at full quality. So if they could increase that, that might be useful for your sports action videographers, animal, wildlife, and so on. So if they increase the frame rate for that, that would be handy. For shots per second, do you need more than 20 to 30 frames per second in photo? Personally, I don't think you do. I'm actually shooting my bird photos, and I'll show you some examples in just a moment. Bird photos I'm shooting at 20 frames per second, and it's already too many photos. Too many. The difference in motion or movement between 20 frames per second is like this. Can you see my hand moving? It's like so incremental you barely notice there's any movement. In fact, I often skip 2 to 3 frames when editing to try and find something that was actually different because the motion is so slow in the transition because it's so fast. But they may, in fact, make it instead of up to 20 frames per second, 30, 40, 50, 60 frames per second in highest resolution. That may be a thing that's interesting, especially for high-end sports photographers and videographers doing things like Olympics or major sporting events. That might be very relevant. Personally, I'm not going to rush out and buy it even if they released it tomorrow. I'm so happy with the product I have. If I did anything at all, I'd probably buy a second-hand Z8, get it for about $5,000 Australian or 3.8 US, second-hand market on eBay, and that would be a great second camera. Right now, I don't need any extra features. The features that the cameras already have, the Z8 and the Z9, are already above and beyond what I use or what I require. So why would I buy something that did more that I wouldn't use and just never actually activate and turn on? To me, it just seems like a waste of money just because it's the new trendy thing to have. And that's actually a trap a lot of people can fall into with buying lenses and camera gear and accessories. You buy things because you're actually blown away by the specs and the numbers and how awesome everybody raves online that they are, and then you're not really appreciating that you're never actually going to use it. So these lenses you buy, they sit in the cupboard for 6 months or 12 months, they're depreciating in value and you're not actually using them even. This is why you'll notice that when I talk about cameras and lenses, I'm often talking about buying the cheapest one you can, because I've noticed I've bought a lot of very expensive high-end product that's sat in the cupboard losing money, and I just didn't feel I used it to justify that expense. I probably just got swept up in the hype of it. So I'm encouraging people not to do that necessarily and really spend some time and think what you actually need versus what you actually desire. Sometimes they're very contrasty and different, and you can save yourself thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for your patience and time with me. I wish you a wonderful week. So long.